Let's get you up to speed now with the latest market news. U.S. stocks, they rebounded on Thursday as investors brushed off the strong increases in U.S. inflation and instead focused on the solid economic fundamentals. Asian markets, in the meantime, they ended the day in the green as well, maybe boosted by the Chinese New Year happening there. And our neighbors in Europe wrapped up the day as well here in the green. All looking good today. Here in Switzerland, in the meantime, well, the SMI finished as well in the green territory, but not too much, just by 0.21%. So, who were the movers and shakers this Thursday? Well, not a good day for the world's biggest food company, Nestlé, which released its results. Weakness in North America led Nestlé to forecast only modest organic growth sales this year after its slowest gain in at least 2 decades. The weak performance underscores the challenges for the Swiss company to reposition itself as a provider of healthy food and drinks. Organic growth in 2017 was below last year's pace and the weakest since at least the mid-1990s. Imagine that. Well, sales growth was weak at a time when the global economy was picking up. So not very impressive results there. Shares in the maker of the Kit Kat chocolate bars and Nescafé hit a 10-month low thereafter, dropping by 2.1%, and it was the biggest loser on the SMI today. Also making headlines today is a company called Straumann, as the dental implant maker reported healthy annual revenues compared to Nestlé. The sales in North America and the Asia Pacific was the main driver there. The company's full-year revenues jumped by 16% to more than 1 billion Swiss francs. Here we have it. And another piece of good news for investors in Straumann, the company proposed to increase the dividend per share for 2017 to 4.75 Swiss francs. Here we go. The share price as well. That's why Straumann shares ended the day in green territory as well. But the big story of today really was, of course, Nestlé. Not the best day, as we heard, for the food and drink giant, posting the lackluster results from 2017. And today we caught up with CFO François-Xavier Roger to get his take on the company's latest performance. It was the US market that was disappointing for the food giant.
The growth is actually broad-based. When we look at it by geography, we have growth in all the regions, in the Americas, in Europe, in Africa, Middle East, Asia. So it's very well distributed in terms of geography, and it is very well distributed as well by product category, which means that the growth is taking place across all our categories. The US market is a little bit of a difficult one today, given that there is a soft consumer demand, and we saw that clearly as at the end of the year. This is not only for us. I mean, the US food and beverage market is actually flat, and we have been flat, roughly speaking, as well last year. And this happens across categories, so this is not necessarily linked to our portfolio.
But Nestlé benefited from the tax reform in the US.
We did, absolutely, yes. We expect to get about $300 million of tax reduction going forward per annum. From 2018 onwards, indeed. Plus, we will recognize one-off tax gain of 850 million that we have already recognized in 2017.
A word on Mr. Schneider. He's been the new Nestlé CEO for a year now. What did his arrival change in the management of the group?
Well, Mark is coming from outside with an outstanding track record of value creation in his former company, so he's bringing an external perspective as well. While he knows very well Nestlé as well, and he has had time already to get to know the company, get to know the people. I think that Mark is very strategic, so I think that he has brought a lot, and you have seen quite a lot of input already. Things that have changed since he has arrived. We have been active in portfolio management. You saw what happened with the disposal of US confectionery, the acquisition of Atrium. We have made some progress as well in terms of capital structure, announcing a share buyback of 20 billion Swiss francs a couple of months ago. We have had some changes in the organization with Nestlé Nutrition now integrated into the zones. These are just examples of changes that have happened since the beginning of the year.
Let's talk now about L'Oréal Group. They want to buy the share back. How do you see this initiative?
We have announced this morning that we do not intend to renew the shareholder agreement with the Bettencourt family. We are very happy with our investment with L'Oréal. It has delivered a very attractive return for Nestlé over the years. We are very supportive of the management at L'Oréal. We have entertained an excellent relationship with the Bettencourt family, and we intend to continue this excellent relationship. But we do not intend to renew the shareholder agreement so as to preserve all available options for the benefit of Nestlé shareholders.
And what is going to be your acquisition strategy this year?
Well, I can't give you any details. That being said, in our Capital Market Day in London a few months ago, we have announced that we had an interest in growing externally so as to strengthen our portfolio in a few categories, for example, in our fast-growing categories like coffee, like water, like infant nutrition, as well as in consumer care. Since then, we have already announced a couple of moves, such as the one that we did with Atrium, for example, or we made a move as well with the acquisition of Blue Bottle in coffee as well. So we are really delivering along the line of what we had announced a few months ago.
Well, our guest on the Living Markets tonight is Nicolas Burki, analyst and portfolio manager at Mirabeau Asset Management in Geneva. Good to have you with us, Nicolas. Let's first of all talk about the results of Nestlé. The market reaction was pretty harsh and shares actually plunged by like 2.4 to 2.6% during the trading day, the sharpest fall since last year. What do you make of the results?
Well, I would say that if you look at the results, they were shy of the expectations by about 1 to 2% on the top line. And then you had a quite tough goodwill amortization. And despite a favorable tax effect, the net income was down about 15%. And so all in all, it was quite a disappointment on the figures by itself. And then if you look at the explanation, as has been told by the CFO, it's quite a surprise that, in fact, Europe and Asia are faring quite well, but that more or less the weak spot is in North America, that has, in fact, currently the best economic conditions. So it was quite a surprise to see that it does not transform for Nestlé into a higher growth. So on that level, that was a bit disappointing. Then if you look at more details, 2017 was also a year with a lot of restructuring. So they've had to spend about 1.5 billion on restructuring. And they've also been hit by by about 900 million of raw material increase. Which, if you report it to cost of goods sold, is an inflation of around 2%. On the other side, they could only pass on an inflation into their product prices of 0.8%. So it's clearly a sign of the condition happening currently. Companies are facing on their sourcing some inflation of wages and materials that they cannot directly pass on to the consumer. So this was a bit of a disappointment, and that's why it came at the lowest range of expectation, and that's also why it's translated into a negative price reaction, which is a bit tough with regards to the disappointment on figures, because not everything is negative on Nestlé. So in a sense, you could say that 2017 was more or less a trough year based on the guidance they've given for 2018, because the restructuring costs should halve, and many of the initiatives that have been taken by the new CEO in particular and the management as wide.
Right, Nicolas.
Will take their effects
about
gradually.
The new CEO, sorry to interrupt here, talking about the new CEO, Mark Schneider, I'm sure you remember the investor conference last year when he made a very big impression by not wearing a tie in London, but still it's not an easy start now with these results. What kind of future will he have to face, do you think?
Well, I think that maybe there's a bit of impatience in the market, and on the side of analysts. I think that during his conversation and his press releases and conferences with investors, he has shown that he wants to take one project after the other one. Today he still reiterated that he's taking one project after the other one, and he's looking layer by layer, because he wants to do one thing at a time and not hurry up and endanger the business in itself. So I think he really has a long-term view, and he really wants to do the portfolio rejuvenation in a very ordered manner and without impacting the business. So I think there's also maybe a misperception of the time horizon between what's expected and what is planned to do.
So with Nestlé and Straumann today, which we reported in our market summary, we are nearly through with the earnings season. What were your impressions? Are you surprised by any major earning and result?
So up to now, based on our observations, we've had about 45 companies publishing with analyst estimates you could compare to, and we see that about 3 out of 4 companies are publishing revenues that are above expectations, so it's rather a high score. On the net income, it's a bit lower at about 60%, and if you split between large companies and small and mid, you arrive to a statistic that's a bit better for small and mid and a bit lower for the large companies of the SMI. So for the SMI, it's about 1 of 2 that's published above the expectations, and the other 1/2 has disappointed. So what we see is more or less a continuation of the trend. So companies are running on what we've seen in the past quarters in 2017. And I would say that the companies that are more in the restructuring phase have had a more positive surprise score. So all in all, it's more a continuation, and the surprises, except if you take a few really deep differences to estimates, are more or less a continuation of the trend.
We're not quite through the earnings marathon yet, though, Nicolas. We still have Schindler's, the elevator company, reporting tomorrow. We have Glencore, we have Swiss Life and Swiss Re coming up next week as well. Can you give us a sense of where these companies are, heading?
So we still have about 1.5 months of publishing to have the whole picture. However, I think that more or less, as Nestlé showed, many companies are in a restructuring phase, so they've had some tough charges in 2017, but expect a recovery or an acceleration in 2018. All of this is on the back of a rather good macroeconomic picture. So I think it's more or less driving the estimates on their same up trajectory. And now we run with about 12% earnings revision on 12 months rolling. And it's been a bit accelerating for the large cap companies since a few months. And now they are more or less at the level of small and mid. So it's quite encouraging, in fact, for the Swiss equity market.
Given the huge market corrections that we have seen over the last couple of days, what do you expect? What is going to happen over the next couple of days? Will we see more volatility, the VIX, hitting highs again?
Well, it's really difficult to predict the VIX level. However, we've clearly exited a period of very low volatility last year. So if you take an average, the VIX was about 19%, and last year we were closer to 10, 11, and now we are back to more or less the normal. So it's been very much some kind of a shock, a wake-up shock, related or explained a posteriori by the rate increase. I think now the market is currently stabilizing and expecting a direction, waiting on a path to follow. But I would say that the earnings season, that's also quite good in Europe and in the US, should give some kind of floor for the investors. However, you really cannot predict the level of fear And we've turned out from more or less complacency or comfort to a market that's more aware that there are some kind of risk and volatility. So we expect that the volatility is going to increase, and this will give opportunities for stock selection. I think it's good for investors to have opportunities to pick up in the next few weeks and months.
We'll see that. Thank you so much. That was Nicolas Burki. He's analyst and portfolio manager at Mirabeau, joining us from Geneva. Coming up after the break, a look at the latest in Olympics and sports news with our sports correspondent Matt Leighton. And later, one of Switzerland's most acclaimed authors of international reputation, Peter Stamm, talks to me in our Spotlight program about his new book release on February the 22nd and whether he prefers to flick through a good old paper book or download ebooks from Amazon Kindle. Stay tuned with us here on The Living Markets.
I think Amazon is maybe between 10 and 15% of book sales of a specific book, which is a lot. But there is still the good old bookshop that's, to me, much better than just clicking on things. I mean, you can talk to a bookseller. You can, if they know you, they will tell you which books would be good for you, and you can leaf through the books. So to me, it's not really. I don't want to buy books on the internet.
Since the founding of the Red Cross in 1863, the city of Geneva has a long tradition of hosting international organizations. In our program, International Geneva, we'll be exploring issues of international cooperation, humanitarian assistance, and human rights, and talk to international players about the challenges and solutions to global problems.
International Geneva with Martina Fuchs on CNN Money Switzerland.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. Get the latest Swiss business and financial information on TV, on our website, cnnmoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. The best Swiss business news whenever and wherever you need it. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Romandie Formation, business opportunities anywhere.
What drives the Swiss business world? What makes the economy tick? And how do companies react to the ever-changing challenges of the markets? We've got our finger on the Swiss pulse. We'll bring you the ups and downs, bulls and bears of the world of business, always asking what it means for you. The Swiss Pulse, weekdays from 6 to 9 p.m.
Business is always changing. Keep up with CNN Money. Maggie Lake is live in the heart of the world's economic epicenter, New York City, tracking all the action of the stock exchanges and the big business stories from around the world. Get top analysis of market movements and a daily breakdown of financial headlines. CNN Money with Maggie Lake.
At the end of the business day, we're only just getting started. On the Living Markets from 6 to 7 p.m., we crunch the numbers on the financial markets, bring you the top analysis of the day, and set the agenda for tomorrow. Always with Switzerland important global links in mind. The Living Markets, weeknights from 6 to 7 p.m., only on CNN Money Switzerland.
More on the Olympics underway in South Korea with a third of the medals now allocated. Let's catch up with our sports correspondent, Matt Leighton, here in the studio. So, Matt, today we got warmer temperatures, we got the sun coming out. perfect scene for, big wins today. But how did the Swiss Olympic team perform?
They were under pressure today because with the cancellation of events in the last few days, so many big events were stacked today. Until today, Switzerland won 1 medal. They've now won a second one. They came third in the men's downhill, the blue ribbon event. Björn Fotz, who's the world champion, may be expected to win. He was beaten by 18 hundredths of a second by Axel Lund Svindal, 35 years old. He's the oldest gold medal winner. By the way, he's not the oldest medal winner in skiing. It's Bodie Miller, who was 36. So that was a bit of a disappointment starting off. Then we had the giant slalom. Laura Goetz in fine form. She fell over in the first 2 minutes. That was a bit of a bummer. But Michaela Schifrin, all the news is about her because she could go for 5 events. So she won that. And then we saw the biathlon. Last time, Selina Gasparin, she's one of 3 sisters. In the Winter Olympics, there's only 5 sets of 3 siblings that's ever been in there. Elisa came 8th today, Selina came 64th, and Aita, she came 68th. So a little bit disappointing today. So far, 118 medals have been given out. However, Switzerland have only won 2. But it is saving a lot of money for Swiss Olympic because they have to pay out 40,000 Swiss francs every gold medal. So they're saving a fortune so far.
Well, there's still a couple of days to go, but maybe the problem is that the Swiss athletes are not focused enough. Maybe they go to the bar in Pyeongchang. How do they spend their time, their day off?
Swiss athletes are almost unique. The skiers are really institutionalised and they're all together. But most of the other athletes from small sports, even though they're 18, 20 years old, some of them, they're very mature. Culturally, they're mature. Everything about them is mature in the sense that they go sightseeing. Some of them will play cards. Some of them watch the other events. So very few of them are just sitting at home watching TV. They're all out there doing things. And that's really, really great to see. They're seeing one-off world opportunity. Let's take advantage of it. And that's the great thing about the Swiss, is they're multicultural, they're open to everything, and they're really having a wonderful time.
And here on the Swiss Pulse, we always look forward to the next big thing. So what is going to happen overnight? What can we look forward to?
I suppose Switzerland have a really good reputation in the snowboard cross for the women. Gold medal in 2006, bronze medal in 2010. 3 athletes going there tomorrow. There's going to be the women's slalom. Wendy Holdener, lots of podiums, no medals there. Can she beat Michaela Schifrin? There is going to be the Super G for the men. There's curling continues. Switzerland came back a little bit today, and many, many other events. Just one thing I forgot to mention is Switzerland had high hopes in the men's ice hockey. They were absolutely overdone today. Before today, they were saying, against Canada, we have a good chance. They were beaten 5-1, so that's not looking good. So fingers crossed. The day belonged to Norway. They've won 17 medals. 5,000 Norwegians live in Switzerland, so I hope you're having a party.
I can't wait to have you back to report on the Olympic Games tomorrow, and hopefully we can get some more medal coverage as well from the Swiss Olympic team. Thank you, Matt. Well, he is one of Switzerland's best-selling authors of international fame. Ahead of his new book publication on February the 22nd, Peter Stamm talked to me earlier in our Spotlight program about his writing style, future publication plans, and whether he prefers the good old paper book or download ebooks from Amazon Kindle. Hello and welcome to Spotlight, the show that brings you all the latest buzz from the world of music, entertainment, fashion, culture and lifestyle. He is one of Switzerland's most acclaimed authors of international reputation. In his new book, Die sanfte Gleichgültigkeit der Welt, published on February the 22nd, Peter Stamm writes about reliving life and raises existential questions. Stamm is also the author of the novels To the Back of Beyond or All Days Are Night. His prize-winning books have been translated into more than 30 languages. For his body of work and accomplishments in fiction, he was shortlisted for the Man Booker International Prize in 2013, and a year later, he won the prestigious Friedrich Hölderlin Prize. Welcome, Peter. So, your new book is about experiencing one's own life again. Would it really be such a nice thing to reliving one's own life?
I don't know. If you could do it differently, maybe it would be interesting to see what comes out if you make certain decisions differently. But that's not the case in the book. So he somehow can just watch another person living his life.
In the book, the protagonist Christoph travels to Stockholm to meet with the much younger Lena, and he tells her that he met her about 20 years before and knows everything about her life. What is the key message of this book? It's a game between the past and the present, isn't it?
Yes, but I wouldn't call it a message. I try to create a world when I write a book and to somehow invite the reader to join me in my world and to make his own experiences. And depending on who he is or who she is, she will read the book completely different. So it's in a way just a playground to make your own thoughts.
So describe to me, what is your own world? If I get invited to it, what can I see?
Well, each book is another world, of course. So this world is I don't know, some people call it a dark world. I don't think that it's very dark. It's especially not in this book.
Are you pessimistic or an optimistic person in that regard?
I would call myself an optimist, yes. But also I try to be honest in my books. So it's not the world of advertisement. It's not the shining world. It's a world as the world is. I mean, with dark and light sides.
Your writing style is very, very different and very diverse all the time, but you have written a lot of prose, also radio drama and theater plays, and one of your inspirations was actually Ernest Hemingway. You read one of his books when you were only 17 years old. How would you describe your genre?
Well, I'm basically a realistic writer. Hemingway was just important to me because he for me, was maybe the first one who found a completely new way to tell stories, a way where you feel that you're actually in this world. It's not a guy telling me a story, but it's really a world that's there like the real world. So that impressed me, and that's what I try to do in my writing. Now I've become a bit more. Well, it's not completely realistic anymore. In my last two books, there are elements of maybe the Romantic period where you have like doppelgangers, or you have things that cannot really be. So that's just something I started to try out now.
You wrote your first book, Agnes, which we see on the back of the wall, in 1998. It's about a man who writes about his relationship with a much younger woman. Which one would you say is your best work so far?
I don't like to qualify them in that way, because it's not like sports where you can say this guy is faster than the other guy. They are all very different. I mean, each book is a different world, as I said, and I have different relationships to them. I try to compare. I like to compare them to children. When you have more than one child, you wouldn't say this is my favorite child. You just say this one I like him because he's like me, and the other one I like him because he's not like me. And so I have to each book a different relationship.
Let's take a look at the Swiss writing landscape. There are not so many authors of international reputation. Why is that? Is it a language problem, or maybe the culture?
Well, in general, there are not so many authors that are read internationally. It's the same with Dutch authors or French authors or even English, maybe not English authors. It's just hard to translate literature, and it's hard to find publishers who dare to introduce a foreign writer to their market, because it's not so obvious for a Chinese person or a Persian person to read a book by a Swiss author. So it's just quite hard, and you need publishers who like your literature so much that they say, I will go on for years to promote these books. So
your books have been translated into 30 and more languages, even into Chinese and Arabic and so on. Do these readers really get your message, and do they understand what you are trying to say?
Well, they certainly read them differently, but I would say each person reads the book differently. So, but I sometimes I've asked myself, what does a Japanese guy do with a book that takes part in Lake Constance or on the shores of Lake Constance? I mean, it's a completely different world, and I don't really know how the translation works into such a different language. So, but we do read foreign literature as well, and we can, I guess, somehow understand a Chinese or a Japanese writer.
you're most known for your cool and sparse writing style. What is the key to your writing success, would you say? What sets you apart from the others?
I don't, well, it's a hard question because you cannot really...
we raise difficult questions here on CNN Money Switzerland.
Very good. No, maybe the international success has to do with if it's books that speak to people in foreign countries. The more Swiss my books are, the less they appeal maybe to a foreign audience. And it seems that they are translatable. I mean, it's not a language that plays with words or that is very difficult. It's not easy to translate, but it's not a language that cannot be translated, I would say. And then it's themes that speak to everybody. I mean, it's mostly about relationships between men and women, and that's a theme that works all over the world, I would say.
Now, some people do think that your writing is a bit dark, is a bit pessimistic, and at the same time, Switzerland is one of the richest countries in the world, yet the suicide rates are some of the highest in the world. What kind of problems are there in Swiss society?
I wouldn't call them dark, my books, but I try to be honest and to somehow show the world as it is. And of course, there are dark parts. And maybe that's the interesting point of view in Switzerland, that we have all we need in a way. We are not like an African country where all my goals are to buy a car or a house. So it's interesting to see what do people do when they have everything.
Do you think that people here, they really lack the meaning of life and finding a purpose?
In a way, and then there is also, of course, a bad conscience, because we know that our richness is based on the poorness of the rest of the world. I mean, we have iPhones and dresses that are made by people who are hardly paid, and that's why we are so rich and why we have so much.
Coming back to writing, what do you think about other Swiss authors and novelists? Do you have any favorite other writer?
Well, my favorite Swiss writer
is yourself.
No. It was Markus Werner. He died a year ago. He was a wonderful author. I had the chance to meet him, to know him. Another one is Klaus Merz, who writes very, very small novels. He's also a poet who writes wonderful books. So it's quite a rich scene. And there is, of course, also writers of other languages, French and Italian.
What do you look for in a book when you read it?
Different things than I did when I was young. I mean, I don't read for entertainment anymore. I just don't have the time. So it's really, I'm looking for new ways to describe things, for not experimental literature, forcibly, but maybe how somebody deals with his subjects and how he deals with language. That's what interests me.
Now, artists, musicians and writers like yourself here in Switzerland don't have an easy life and often lack financial support. Are you missing some more financial sponsorships and, donations from the government or private institutions here?
That's a hard question. It's difficult for artists all over the world, I would say. And what we have in Switzerland and Germany is the reading. So most authors live from reading their books, not from selling their books. That's a great thing, and we all are very happy with that. Of course, you always want more support, but I wouldn't really know how to do it. It's difficult to find ways to support the right artists and not just anybody. And it's not so bad in Switzerland.
And what's your key advice for young and upcoming writers here in Switzerland?
To work hard, to be honest, to be critical towards themselves. I mean, it's very important not to be just happy with whatever you do and just think you're the greatest artist before you even try to do something. And then to just go on and not give up, because it took me a long time to have success. So it's the normal thing that you're not writing one book and then you're a big success.
Well, the question really is if people still have and take the time to read. I mean, most of the time, right, we spend our days and hours reading Instagram posts and other social media, Facebook, etc. Do we still have time to read?
Well, if I look at my kids, they read a lot. I mean, they read more
because you are their dad.
Not even. I didn't force them to read. I mean, it's really completely open to them. So there are many young people who read a lot, but of course it's a question if when they get older, if they will continue reading, and nobody knows. I mean, book sales have gone down 20% in the last 10 years, I think. We are all a bit afraid, but we'll see.
Are you scared for your own kind of financial survival? You maybe not so much because you're one of the biggest names, but I guess a lot of your colleagues might, think about other careers.
Well, you shouldn't, as an artist in general, you shouldn't be scared too quickly because then you can't work anymore. But as I said, many read from readings, and the reading culture has maybe even developed a little bit because there are many events now, many festivals, and where you can do readings. There is spoken word, there is poetry slams. So that's a very active life, like concerts in music.
Do you nowadays actually spend more time on the road doing these international book tours, or do you still have enough time to really write?
I still have enough time, but I do lots of readings. I would say, about between 90 and 100 readings a year, which is a lot.
Many people around the world nowadays buy e-books on Amazon Kindle. What do you think about this trend?
I'm not against it. I mean, it's only 10% of the book sales, even less. I think with my books it's 5%. I personally prefer a real book, and you can drop it, and if it gets read,
you can smell it. You have a physical copy in your hands.
And the battery never runs down, and so it's the perfect medium. But if people prefer to read on Kindles, why not? I mean, it's the content that matters, not the form.
How important are platforms and e-commerce sites like Amazon or Alibaba for the success of an author?
Well, it's just a big part of sales go through the internet now. Maybe not the bigger, but I think Amazon is maybe between 10 and 15% of book sales of a specific book, which is a lot. But there is still the good old bookshop that's, to me, much better than just clicking on things. I mean, you can talk to a bookseller. You can, if they know you, they will tell you which books would be good for you, and you can leaf through the books. So to me, it's not really, I don't want to buy books on the internet.
Do you still have time and often go to bookstores yourself?
Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. And usually booksellers are interesting people and fun people and nice people.
Do they recognize you on the streets and come to you, some of your readers?
It's not so often. Maybe after I've been on TV, but that doesn't happen very often. But in bookshops, yeah, people recognize me.
And when you write, do you have the business in the back of your head somewhere, or do you just not worry about it too much, just focus on your writing?
No, I never really think about money. That's not how you are successful, I think. If you think too much about money, then it's not working, because it's really, you have to be free when you write and somehow trust that it will work somehow. And if it doesn't, well, that's it. You don't become an artist to get rich, I guess.
And here in Switzerland, I imagine all the artists, they have plenty of freedom, right, to think about what they're working on and are not constrained by outside forces.
Well, I mean, generally life is very easy in Switzerland. So even if you are poor for Swiss, you're still not hungry. I mean, it's not, you don't live in the streets. You can still live more or less a good life. When I had very little money for many, many years, but I didn't suffer. I mean, it would be different if I was an author in an African country or in a South American country.
Before we go, Peter, tell me about your future plans. Are you going on an international book tour or writing another book already?
Well, it's just going on the same things. My life is quite boring. I mean, no, it's not boring, but it's always the same. I write books, I go on trips. Now it's mainly trips in Germany and Switzerland, because I'm having this new book, but I have already an invitation to go to Chile in November and others, foreign countries.
Thank you very much, Peter Stamm. And thank you, audience, for watching this edition of Spotlight. See you next time. That was Swiss author Peter Stamm talking to me earlier. There's a growing buzz around electric cars, especially in light of the growing pollution problem in India's cities. CNN's Nikhil Kumar visits the biennial Delhi Auto Expo to explore India's robustly growing auto industry.
It's already the world's 5th largest car market. More and more Indians are buying cars for the first time as the economy grows.
We have a huge population and the aspirations are also growing, so people have started buying cars.
Sugato Sen from the country's leading car industry body says India is still playing catch-up with the West.
The penetration of cars in India is only 20 per 1,000 people, whereas in any Western developed country it will be much, much more.
And India isn't just buying more cars. It wants to make more cars and it wants to sell them to the world. It's all part of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Make in India initiative, a drive to boost manufacturing. But more cars also means more pollution, already a major problem in big Indian cities like Delhi. Which is why there is a growing focus on electric technology. In fact, last year, one of Modi's top ministers said India's aim is to make sure that by 2030, most cars in the country are powered by electricity. But there's a long, long road ahead. It's not just about cars. To achieve its electric dream, India needs to build more and better infrastructure. Take access to electricity. It's still a problem in parts of this country, and even when there is power, it's not always regular. All that needs to change. For now, sales are low, very low. Mahindra & Mahindra, the top manufacturer in India's electric car market, says it sold only 1,200 such vehicles last year. But the mood is still upbeat, as companies eye hundreds of millions of potential new customers.
In the last 6 to 9 months, the potential of electric vehicles becoming mainstream has increased substantially.
Pavan Goenka heads Mahindra & Mahindra, which has been in the automobile business for 70 years.
Yes, there's a long way to go, but it's not very difficult and not very expensive. A typical charger will cost less than $5,000, okay? And therefore, to put 1,000 charging points in a city is not something that's unaffordable for the government. For $5 million, you can cover a city like Delhi.
If India succeeds, it won't just achieve a manufacturing goal. With some 12 million young people entering the workforce each year, India desperately needs new ways to generate jobs. Modi himself came to power promising to help young Indians find work. A successful electric revolution with more cars, more factories and more jobs could drive India towards more than one goal. Nikhil Kumar, CNN, New Delhi.
And that's it for the Living Markets tonight. Up next is the big picture with my colleague Amanda Kane when she talks about Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. I'll see you for the Newsmaker at 8 p.m. See you soon.
CNN Money Switzerland Leisure Weather. We start with a webcam of the day. We continue with the Alps of western Switzerland. And the weather forecast for the next days. A glance now on the resorts of central and eastern Switzerland. And an overview of the weather conditions to come. Here is the snow report of the ski resorts in France. And the weather forecast for this region. And we end with the Austrian and Italian Alps. We wish you a pleasant stay in the mountains.
Let's talk tech. Do you want to see the latest gadgets? understand where robotics where we'll be meeting the people behind the big ideas here in Switzerland and around the world and finding out what it means for businesses, consumers, and the planet.
Tech Talk with Anna Maria Montero on CNN Money Switzerland.
Money is more than just currency. It is the fuel for how we live our lives. It connects us. It drives us. It buys us things. But it is more than that. It is who we are and what we want. Money isn't everything, but it is everywhere. And so are we. We are younger, we are richer, and we are smarter. We are money. CNN Money.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran.
We are in Jerusalem. Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to press you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
When it comes to volatility, Bitcoin is no stranger to highs and lows. In the Big Picture Hour, we look at the future of the cryptocurrency as it heads back to $10,000. Experts include Professor Thomas Ankenbrand, who tells us why regulating Bitcoin is a positive move.
In my opinion, it's not for sure that this regulation negative. It's also a sign that the market is maturing, and if the market is more regulated and more mature, it's more interesting also for a broader spectrum of investors.
The future of humanity concerns us all. Tonight on The Newsmaker, we find out how the Club of Rome is campaigning to raise awareness of potential threats. Graham Maxton is the Secretary General, and he tells us the clock is ticking when it comes to the environment.
We're putting ourselves into a situation where eventually all the ice on the planet will melt. There will become vast areas which are uninhabitable, where crops yields will collapse, where water will be a big problem. I mean, we're looking at something which is the biggest challenge that humanity has ever faced.
You're watching The Big Picture. I'm Amanda Kane. Good to have you join us. Good evening. Before we delve into the world of Bitcoin, let's have a look at what's happening around the world. And we start off with some financial news. The recovery rally is in full swing on Thursday as global stocks continue to rebound. And investors seem to brush off the pickup in US inflation. European markets gained about 1% and Asian markets advanced as well. Last week's financial market turmoil was sparked by worries that US wages and prices were suddenly rising quickly. Coupled with new data, it led to a strong sell-off. Syngenta forecast a modest sales growth for 2018 on Thursday, citing low grain prices. The Swiss agricultural chemicals and seed maker was bought last year by ChemChina for $43 billion. The turnover, though, fell by 1% to almost $13 billion in 2017. It says it aims to sell around $5 billion in bonds in coming weeks as it nears a final settlement with US farmers who had sued over genetically engineered corn. In other Swiss news, the board of directors of Swiss Post continues to stand behind Group CEO Susanne Ruff. Post President Urs Schwaller promised a complete investigation into illegal bookings by the Postbus subsidiary company and announced that Ruff's yearly bonus will be frozen until further notice. Ruff has been CEO since 2012 and has refused to step down after admitting mistakes were made by Postbus. But she says she only discovered that last November that the payment transfers carried out by the bus company, which is financed by public funds, were in fact illegal. The 19-year-old suspect, who authorities say shot and killed at least 17 at a Florida high school in the US, is expected in court on Thursday. CNN correspondent Natasha Chen is here with more details.
Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School is closed until further notice. The public school that was home to some 3,000 students is now a crime scene.
The first thing that popped in my mind was, where's the shooter? And where is he going next?
At least 17 are dead and more than a dozen others injured after police say shooting suspect and former 19-year-old student Nicholas Cruz opened fire as school was close to being dismissed for the day. Investigators believe the suspect pulled the fire alarm to draw people out of school in order to kill as many as possible. Cruz is expected in court today as investigators look into the teen's troubled past and variety of gun and violence-related posts on social media.
Valentine's Day, everyone was happy, spreading love, and it just crashed down so quick. No one deserves this.
The entire community in Parkland, Florida will need more of that love and support for the foreseeable future.
It shouldn't happen anywhere in this country. And we've got to find a way for this to stop.
Cyril Ramaphosa was confirmed as the new president of South Africa on Thursday, marking a new era for the country's economy and the South African rand. Jacob Zuma resigned as president on Wednesday after an abundance of corruption scandals. The rand rallied to its highest level since 2015, following weeks of manoeuvring by the ruling African National Congress to remove Zuma from office. And the red carpet rolls out in Berlin on Thursday to kick off the Berlin Movie Festival. And the hashtag #MeToo debate seems to be taking centre stage. The festival is organising a panel discussion on sexual harassment in the world of entertainment, and it launched a new website called Speak Up, aimed at encouraging those affected by sexual harassment in the film industry to come forward. According to Berlinale director Dieter Kosklik, certain productions whose directors were accused of sexual assault were disqualified from the lineup. The festival takes place until Sunday, the 25th of February. He's one of Norway's best-loved and most successful winter athletes. And now Axel Lund Svindal has made history by becoming the oldest skier to win Olympic gold and his country's first in the speed discipline. Svindal has been one of the dominant speed skiers of his generation. But Olympic gold had always eluded him until on a perfect day in Pyeongchang, after a week of high wind and delays, Svindal finally won his downhill gold. Bitcoin and blockchain are giving traditional currencies a run for their money. Coming up, we look at the highs and lows of the cryptocurrency and why Switzerland is embracing Everything from Ether to Bitcoin.
Excuse me, miss, you dropped this.
No, it's just a penny.
Just a penny? Just a penny? It all begins with the humble penny. Whether writing your first check or cashing big checks. To those at the top making their mark, closing deals round the clock. On Quest Means Business, we know every penny has power. And it's not how many you have. It's what you do with them that counts. That's the marvel of money. Quest Means Business. What a profitable hour!
News programs are usually full of short stories that barely go beneath the surface. We give you the big picture every weekday evening at 7 p.m. The big picture goes deeper, looking at an issue from different angles and bringing you the guests that take time to speak, explain and elaborate. Our viewers get a deeper understanding of the day's issues and the context that underlies them. The big picture, weekdays from 7 to 8 p.m.
It's high energy and fast-paced, so buckle up as Front Seat brings you the latest news and views from the automotive world. Car developments, industry news, interviews with successful drivers, the latest trends and next-level innovation here in Switzerland and around the world. On Front Seat, we'll keep you on the right road.
Front Seat with Hannah Wise on CNN Money Switzerland.
CNN Money Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. From the heart of Europe, watch CNN Money Switzerland.
Good evening, you're watching the Swiss Pulse. It is the big picture hour. And I don't know about you, but it feels to me that there's not a day that goes by without Bitcoin hitting the headlines, not to mention rearing its head in our conversation. This Thursday is no exception. The cryptocurrency is back on the rise and it's heading towards $10,000. This follows a series of sharp declines throughout the start of the year that wiped off about half of its market value. But you may well remember just there in mid-December, it sat just shy of $20,000. Quite amazing. But whether you're a believer or not, there's no doubt that Bitcoin continues to dominate conversations all over the place. Let's just take a minute to quickly remind ourselves of what it actually is.
Remember the financial crash of 2008? It prompted a tech genius with the alias of Satoshi Nakamoto to invent the world's first cryptocurrency, Bitcoin. The vision was simple: to create a currency that wasn't bound by borders or backed by governments or institutions. This is what you need to know. 1. Your digital wallet. This is where you keep your Bitcoin. It's held online, and just like a normal bank account, you can use it to buy things. 2. Blockchain. This is how it all works. The blockchain is the public accounts of Bitcoin, available to everyone. So if Bob in Canada wants to send a Bitcoin to Emma in South Africa, everyone on the whole network will see it take place. And they even use mathematical aliases instead of names, so it's also anonymous. 3. Miners. Now, these are the people who perform the checks and balances of the system. For doing that, they are rewarded with small fees, but also, very importantly, the chance to crack special codes to release yet more Bitcoin. Now, at first, this process was easy, but there are a finite number of Bitcoin, 21 million to be exact, and it's getting harder and harder to find them. That and the volatility of the currency are just two of the challenges facing Bitcoin in the future.
Now, not forgetting, it's not just Bitcoin on the market. There are thousands of virtual currencies out there. Ether, Litecoin, many more, to name a few, all making their mark on the financial landscape. They all experience the highs and the lows together, though. Take a look at this. Bitcoin and Ether have followed very similar patterns in the last 3 months. We see that the peaks and troughs, they follow similar patterns. While Bitcoin is worth 10 times more than Ether, they seemingly ride the tides together. The reason why? Well, one explanation is that many crypto investors hold more than one currency in the purse. If they decide to sell one, then they sell them all. And Switzerland, a country famed for traditional banking, is in the running to win the crypto race. The city of Zug, also known as Crypto Valley, will let you use your digital wallet almost anywhere, be it to pay for a fine or to order a beer. Not only, several Swiss banks are offering cryptocurrencies to their clients. But it comes with caution, especially as more countries opt to ban or heavily regulate the new currencies. Thomas Ankenbrand is a professor at Lucerne University of Applied Science and Arts. He specialises in fintech research, probably why he's keynote speaker at a cryptocurrencies event here in Zurich this evening, a conference by CNNMoney, Switzerland's media partner bank Swissquote. Let's hear what he had to say. Bitcoin has really experienced volatility this last week, dropping to below 6,000, and now it's back up this week. What's driving that volatility? Is it linked to what we've seen happening in the stock markets, or is it due to regulation?
I think there are different reasons, and you can ask the question similar for the swings last year, where we have seen a huge increase in the Bitcoin market price or also in the other cryptocurrencies. I think there's a high volatility, what seems that a lot of transactions, and it's a high interest from buyers and sellers. So, in my opinion, it's not only the fundamentals which are important, because we have also seen last year different regulations. I believe more in the explanation from behavioral finance. What I think, there is also some herding behavior from the investors and speculators. Last year, it was perhaps a little bit more the greed, and this year it's more the fear.
But there is fear that regulation will come. I mean, we've even heard from the head of the International Monetary Fund that this will happen, that, you know, cryptocurrencies have to be regulated. So that will come, right?
Yes, of course. But in my opinion, it's not for sure that this regulation negative. It's also a sign that the market is maturing, and if the market is more regulated and more mature, it's more interesting also for a broader spectrum of investors.
These cryptocurrencies are actually being taken seriously. That's what the regulation would allude to. In terms of lots of transactions that you mentioned, who's buying and selling as we speak?
To be honest, I don't know. We try with our research project really to scan the blockchains, because you see all the transactions, which is really great on the blockchain. But because the blockchain is anonymously, it's difficult to really cluster the different type of investors. So we see different types of calls, or we think there are different types. One are I would say, the nerds, the computer specialists, which are investing in such things. Then there are people, it depends, of course, also on the cryptocurrency, which try something for first time, I think these are especially Bitcoin buyers. And then you see also some speculators which are really try to make a profit.
You mentioned something fascinating, behavioral finance, that maybe investors are investing due to emotion. They hear about it, they want to be a part of it. Some even say it reminds them of the glamour of the old trading days. It's fast-paced, it's interesting, it's fun. Is that what you're seeing?
Yeah, I think this is one explanation for that. And then you have in behavioral finance not only this emotions which for everybody are clear, you have also herding behavior, that people do the same as their neighbor, and so the swings are bigger and bigger. If more do the same, then the swing is bigger.
And what about, I mean, in terms of, you know, if you know what you're doing, you could make a lot of money in a day's trading at home. Could you?
It depends a little bit. I think it's, you know, you have in these markets, you can explain to some degrees the swings, but you have still a huge stochastic part, what is mean a random part, which is very hard to forecast.
When we speak of a Bitcoin, I mean, we're talking about a code, really, not a physical coin, and we call them miners that get access to these codes. But some of them have said that actually it's becoming too expensive to mine these codes. Can you explain that?
You know, to be honest, it's different for Bitcoin and other currencies. It's really, we have at the moment, we have 1,500 crypto coins, more or less, and the protocols or the computer programs are quite very different. For Bitcoin, you try to, this mining tries to secure or make the blockchain secure. And for this, they have to solve a problem, a computer problem. And for solving this computer problem, they need electricity. So it depends if it's interesting to mine to solve this problem, is depending on the electricity price and the Bitcoin price. And if the Bitcoin price decreases and the electricity price is at the same level, at some point it could be, very simple spoken, uninteresting to mine.
So what is the real value of a coin, a single coin?
It depends. There are three types of coin, broadly speaking. One coins are the cryptocurrencies. There is no intrinsic value. Then you have utility coins, where utility coins allows to pay fees if you are using a computing platform, for example. In Ether, if you have on the Ethereum blockchain a program, you have to pay the execution with Ether. And then the third one are equity-like instruments where you have some voting and dividend rights. So the valuation models for these three types, or the intrinsic value of these three types, is completely different.
And where does Bitcoin sit in those three categories that you mentioned?
It's a cryptocurrency.
It's a cryptocurrency. Yeah. And in terms of, you know, understanding cryptocurrencies, I mean, when we talk of cryptocurrencies generally, when we read about them, we're talking about all three that you mentioned, or really just a cryptocurrency? Because I think that's probably what's missing here. Maybe people don't understand the difference.
Yeah. No, the people normally it's not very clear, and these frameworks are now growing up, and the people try to bring the single coins in the right framework, and there are also between the three are different types between them. So at the moment, it's very
complex. I mean, do you think this is behind the reason big banks and, you know, very senior people in banks have actually said, honestly, we don't understand them?
I think there are two things. One thing is the blockchain technology or the distributed technology, the underlying technology. which can use for different things. And cryptocurrency is only one use case for distributed ledger technology. I think, yes, of course, it's not easy to understand, but it's also new. And new things, it's always hard to understand how it will work in the future, how are exactly the frameworks. If I remember at the starting of the internet, nobody was sure how to use the internet at this moment.
And speaking of senior people, we have spoken to Oswald Grubel, former CEO and UBS CEO, and he actually said that this cryptocurrency or these cryptocurrencies could be useful in countries, you know, where there's money laundering, where the currency is volatile. Would you agree with that? Could it be useful in some of these countries?
I don't know if cryptocurrency are really the right instrument for money laundering. Because what we see now that the regulator try to control the bridge or the gateway between the cryptocurrencies and the fiat money like US dollar, euro or Swiss franc. Because if you like to use cryptocurrency for money laundering, then you would like to change it at some point back in a fiat currency. And there is the regulation quite strict. And this is for me one reason perhaps why we don't see so many banks at the moment which are offering cryptocurrencies.
Smaller banks have actually come forward and said it could be an opportunity for them to offer advice and give investors access to the coin. Do you think that's something that we'll see more of? Yeah,
I think so. This is what we've seen in the last year, that more and more banks start to offering cryptocurrencies, services in some extent to their clients. But I'm sure that they do it in a quite well-regulated space.
And in terms of, you know, we do hear that you can pay for your train ticket, for example, with coin. Do you think that's changing the economy? How's that working in your mind?
Yeah, but then I come back to Mr. Grubel. I think in Switzerland we have Swiss franc, and it's easier to pay with Swiss franc than with the high volatile Bitcoin. So we don't see it so much as a payment instrument. Our institute also accepts Bitcoin for all our studies and conferences and courses, but so far not a lot of people
more sort of advertising, promotion than reality.
Yeah, to show that we are in the center of the crypto valley.
Do you consider it an asset class in its own right?
We have made quite extensive analysis on that. Yeah, we to see it like Markowitz, based on the paper of Markowitz, we say, yeah, it's an asset class because it's uncorrelated to the other asset classes. And so it brings an additional value to a portfolio. But to be very careful, the time series are very, very short. And what is in the past so is no guarantee for the future.
And in terms of investing, I mean, is there a right price to enter the market?
I don't know. I think what people are really thinking or doing is the actual price, because the actual price is the equilibrium of buyers and sellers.
Just speaking about blockchain again, how does Switzerland fare? Is it leading in that technology? That's the technology that drives the currencies and then you can trade.
I think generally Switzerland offers very, very good conditions for fintech companies. We have also made an analysis for that, and fintech hub ranking, where Switzerland was second behind Singapore, based on the conditions for companies. And so, in my opinion, it was not coincidentally that the crypto valley was in the center of Switzerland, because we have these very good conditions. We have some very innovative entrepreneurs. We have business-friendly administration. And so it was possible that last year the crypto valley Zug and Zurich has profited very strong from the ICO boom.
And speaking about the ICO boom, that happened a lot last year, these initial coin offerings.
Right.
Will we see many more this year?
I think it depends on the price development of the cryptocurrencies generally. I think perhaps we will see some again, but it really depends on the price level.
Thank you very much.
Welcome. Thank you.
And plenty more still to come on the Bitcoin, including how other countries deal with the rise and fall of the cryptocurrency. Don't go away.
Welcome to the CNN Money Switzerland weekend weather, starting with Saturday. And here are the comfort indexes for the Swiss cities. Let's have a look for Saturday in Europe. And the comfort indexes for some cities. Let's go to Sunday in Switzerland. And here are the comfort indexes. And we end with Sunday in Europe. And discover the more attractive cities based on the weather.
Bitcoin talk seems to bring the devil out in us. Some have called it a bubble, others a fraud, while others excited at the prospect of a digital wallet. Let's look how other countries are dealing with digital assets. In Russia, where cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin have yet to be officially regulated by the government, mining farms are booming. CNN Money Claire Sebastian has more.
This is processing power, hundreds of computers in an old Soviet car factory hunting for bitcoins.
Very noisy in here. Very windy.
It's the big idea of Dmitry Marinichev, an entrepreneur and Russian President Putin's internet ombudsman. He wants to make Russia a global leader in cryptocurrencies. There's cheap electricity here, he tells me, and a cold climate which allows you to build facilities like ours and cool the equipment naturally.
How many bitcoins can you mine here in one day?
I don't know.
And that's just it. His computers are in a global race to complete complex mathematical tasks that reward them with bitcoins. That's how mining works. The bitcoins are allocated using blockchain technology, a huge ungoverned reservoir of data that's constantly refreshed as hundreds of thousands of Bitcoin transactions take place every day. And I'm about to add another. Alexander Ivanov, a physicist now developing cryptocurrencies, has agreed to buy me dinner with Bitcoin.
Thank you very much.
The transaction is settled by the mining computers on the Bitcoin network. No banks or credit card companies, which means no fees or commissions. Ivanov runs the online platform Waves.
You can pay here, you can send money to another account. You can also trade at an exchange. It's a decentralized thing. You cannot turn it off. It exists like on its own. So it does not need some kind of governance or guidance.
While blockchain technology is gaining traction, using cryptocurrencies to pay for anything in Russia is illegal at the moment. So when we paid for dinner, the restaurant also had to carry out a mirror transaction in rubles, making it a legal exchange. The owner told me he had already had a visit from the Russian prosecutor's office, who found no wrongdoing with how they handled transactions. Russia's parliament is grappling with the challenges of trying to regulate cryptocurrencies.
I think that the risks are the same for all countries. It's the anonymous nature of the transactions and the fact that it's impossible to apply international anti-money laundering standards to cryptocurrencies at the moment.
At his Bitcoin mine, though, Marinichev says cryptocurrencies may be more transparent than real ones.
Bitcoin can help the world change. It will allow it to cleanse itself from the madness of some individuals, governments and parliaments. It will allow the world to become a more equal place.
This is our technology. Touch it. It's hot.
And the computers even generate energy, all in a day's work on the frontier of money. Claire Sebastian, CNN Money, Moscow.
Well, we've all heard of IPOs, and they are usually hotly anticipated. And now there are ICOs as well. Different, yes, but arguably equally as exciting. We'll be finding all about them. Just a moment, stay with us as we continue our in-depth look at the rise of cryptocurrencies.
We try to be global and we try to be smart. What I want to hear are authentic voices of people who are passionate or intelligent, and that's the consistency that we try to get at.
Fareed Zakaria, GPS.
Only from CNN Money, Switzerland.
What drives Swiss leaders? What is the secret to their success? In The Newsmaker, we speak to successful CEOs, entrepreneurs, politicians, decision makers, opinion leaders, sports, and entertainment personalities. We find out what makes them tick in a special long-form interview that gets to the heart of who they are and where they are going. So pull up a chair and join us for The Newsmaker every weekday evening from 8 p.m. on CNN Money Switzerland.
For somebody to tell you their story, it's something I take really seriously. It's not something you can just parachute in and ask somebody to open their heart to you. To peel away the layers to get to the heart of the person who you're telling a story about.
France will never give up against the terrorists.
And delve beneath the surface of what's happening. You can hear their story, and you're going to do their story justice. You have to show yourself to them.
So right now they're hovering pretty low over this area that's extensively flooded.
CNN's the right place to tell their story.
Only from CNN Money, Switzerland.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Autrement dit, formation, business opportunities anywhere.
What drives the Swiss business world? What makes the economy tick? And how do companies react to the ever-changing challenges of the markets? We've got our finger on the Swiss pulse. Well, we'll bring you the ups and downs, bulls and bears of the world of business, always asking what it means for you. The Swiss Pulse, weekdays from 6 to 9 p.m.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. Get the latest Swiss business and financial information on TV, on our website, cnnmoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. The best Swiss business news whenever and wherever you need it. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
For somebody to
We've talked about Bitcoin this hour tonight, but new cryptocurrencies come to market pretty much daily through what's called an initial coin offering, or ICO. And Switzerland is playing a major role globally in hosting these. Out of the world's 6 largest ICOs, 4 were held in Switzerland. But how do ICOs work? CNN tech correspondent Rami Zabar tells you all you need to know about the concept.
What do Ghostface Killah, Paris Hilton, and Floyd Mayweather have in common? They're all trying to cash in on a new trend, ICOs. You've probably heard of an IPO before. An ICO is a little bit different. During an IPO, investors buy stock, which translates into ownership shares of that company. But in an ICO, an initial coin offering, they buy cryptocurrency tokens, like Bitcoin, but ones made by and for a specific company. Deciding which cryptocurrency to invest in, if any, can be a little bit confusing. There are more than 1,000 cryptocurrencies in circulation right now, with more being introduced almost every day. Elliot Hahn, the managing director of the crypto-focused investment bank, the Argonne Group, says you can think of these digital tokens like the tokens you'd use to play an arcade game. During an ICO, there are two kinds of tokens you can buy. The first is a utility token. It's meant to be used on goods and services offered by the company that developed that cryptocurrency. This is just like when you go to an arcade and exchange money for gameplay tokens. They're meant to be used in the machines at that particular location and nowhere else. The second type of token is called a security token. That doesn't mean that they're safer. The security refers to financial securities. You're buying into the company like you would in an IPO, but you don't get the equity that comes with regular stock. So why would you buy in? The expectation is that those tokens will eventually be worth something once that company develops a way for people to spend them. If demand goes up, early investors can sell their tokens for a profit. But until that happens, you're taking a bit of a gamble. It would be like if your friend had plans to open a new arcade and he convinced you to buy tokens up front. He says there will only be a limited number in circulation, and you trust that eventually those tokens will be worth something once the arcade opens. But right now, it's mostly wishful thinking. Also, until governments set up clear guidelines for how cryptocurrencies should be used, investing in them can be extremely risky. And as we've seen with Bitcoin, the market can be volatile. Singapore has published an ICO best practices guide, and China has temporarily banned them. The SEC has created a cyber unit to investigate misconduct, but ICOs still aren't as clearly regulated as IPOs in the US and most other countries, making it even easier for scammers to take advantage. But whether cryptocurrency is actually the future of money or just a passing fad, you'll be hearing a lot more about ICOs in the coming months, while investors try to cash in and lawmakers try and regulate them.
As we just heard, cryptocurrencies aren't just about speculation. They can also fund companies. Many startups raise funds through the so-called ICOs, or initial coin offering, and Switzerland is hoping to lead the game. Earlier, I spoke to Olivier Depierre, a lawyer specialising in initial coin offerings, to get the lowdown on what it's all about. Olivia, I'd really like you to help us clear the fog today. So let's start with the basics. What's the difference between an ICO, an initial coin offering, to an IPO, an initial public offering?
Okay, so traditionally an IPO would be the offering of a security, of a title of ownership that is a materialized title that exists either physically or it's written on a bank account as the fact that you own it. As an ICO is the initial, as you just mentioned, coin offering. Before it was the initial contribution offering. Now we're even talking about token generating event. And this is the issue of a dematerialized title.
OK, and when you want to buy a coin, you want to buy a cryptocurrency, there are two different types of coin, I understand. Can you maybe explain the difference between the utility coin and the security coin?
Okay, then we could even have a third one, actually. The stricto sensu cryptocurrency is a mean of payment. Traditionally, it's a mean of payment. It could be used for something else, but it's traditionally a mean of payment. But this is not a mean of payment that has a legal tender. It is not recognized by a state as being a particular currency. So in that sense, you could use the word coin for this particular cryptocurrency. The traditional cryptocurrencies we know are Bitcoin. Ether has become a stricto sensu cryptocurrency, but it was before a utility token. And that definition of a utility token is that a title, a token that gives you a right to a service or to an access to a platform. It doesn't imply that there is any financial right attached to it in the sense that it would be a security. And then the third category would be a tokenized security, which is what I explained at the first, in answering your first question. That is a title of ownership that is dematerialized and tokenized, if I can say so.
It sounds ever so complicated. I mean, is it intended to be so abstract?
I'm trying. Maybe I'm making things complicated, but let's go back on the basics. A cryptocurrency is a way to execute payments. You can, as into the fiat currency, which is the other term that everybody knows in our common life, the dollar, the Swiss franc, the euro. Those are traditional currency. A typical cryptocurrency, in the first sense of it, is trying to replace that exact function, with the difference that currency, the cryptographic currency, is issued by a group of people with an informatic program that will decide when and how is this cryptocurrency issued.
If I understand you correctly, then let's just take the basics. So the two types of, let's say, of the coin when you initially invest. One is an existing company that has goods and services that you can buy with this coin. And the other company is perhaps a new fintech that's got the tokens, got the coins, but hasn't got any goods or services to offer yet. Is that how it looks like? So one is like a liquid investment and the other one is more illiquid.
So when you create a token and you're an enterprise trying to finance yourself against this token, you could put as a right into this token a right to access your platform, but on nothing else than that. Or you could put the right to some future benefits according to how successful you will be in your enterprise. And this is kind of a security.
It sounds like there's an awful lot of, it's based on an awful lot of trust. Is that the case? I mean, what sort of law is in place, specifically in Switzerland, to make sure that, anything that's promised is delivered on?
It's an interesting word you just used, because the word trust is implied into the basic functionality and goal of a blockchain. And there is no cryptocurrency and no ICO or token generating event without a blockchain. This happens on a blockchain. So we're not going to say here what is blockchain unless you ask me, but the blockchain is supposed and is very good at replacing trust on other parties and especially people.
Okay, so when we talk about cryptocurrencies, there's probably, over 1,000 in existence globally today?
Yeah, 1,500.
Okay, and in Switzerland, how many are coming online daily, would you say?
It's a very difficult question to answer, because I'm not aware of any particular numbers or any entity, be it an independent entity or public entity, able to tell you what is the global market capital, global exchange, from Swiss investors. Is that the question? How many Swiss investors, or how much money is invested every day in cryptocurrency within Switzerland? That would be the question.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Yes, it's difficult to answer, and I will tell you why. Because the trading platform which you use to purchase a cryptocurrency, if it's the basic cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin, Ether, Bitcoin Cash is starting as well. Ripple is starting as well. The purchase aspect is okay, because you're going through the banking system with giving all your information into the banking system, and those trading licenses are at least surveilled from an AML point of view, that is an anti-money laundering.
So just one second there, Olivia. Are you saying that you're quite happy, you're quite comfortable with, let's say, regulation of new, the initial coin offerings in Switzerland? You're satisfied that the regulation is there?
No, I don't think we can be satisfied. I don't think anybody can be satisfied, except the people who are trying to make a lot of profit. So far, you are, depending on the compliance procedure that is in place, I'm not aware that any of the current trading platform in cryptocurrencies in Switzerland are, for example, looking or asking you if you were using a declared account to purchase the cryptocurrencies through them. This is this has not been put in place so far. But if a bank is interested, and there are a lot of banks in Switzerland that are now interested into getting the proceeds of the cryptocurrencies changed back into fiat currencies, that is CHF, USD, Euro, as I said before, this process is currently being in place through banks to make sure that nobody used an undeclared account to purchase cryptocurrencies. But there is more to answer to your question.
Is
much
the door
more
left open to money laundering, Olivier?
As long as the banking system is getting the proceeds of the cryptocurrencies back into the fiat currencies, I would say no, because banks are very much afraid and they bear their own responsibility, their own liability towards FINMA to make sure that they're not making any money laundering and are not getting those proceeds without knowing that the initial fiat amounts were used from a declared account. But there are other aspects very much important. The first one is the information of the public, and there is a big lack of information to the public. And there is the regulation other than only anti-money laundering that is at stake here in 2018 in Switzerland.
That's right. We'll leave the investors aside for the purpose of this conversation. But just coming back to Switzerland, would you say, I mean, it's a super exciting, whatever Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies really are, it's super exciting, it's super trendy. Is Switzerland a leader in both blockchain and cryptocurrencies?
I think Switzerland is using the traditional success of this particular country, and I'm not being patriot here in saying that everybody knows that we've been through a very stable policy government for a long time. So there is political stability, there is currency stability as well. We can a traditional historical private banking, big activity in Switzerland, together with commodities trading and investment banking. I think all this together with a high level of education and one particular county, but some other counties, cantons, having a very interesting tax rates for companies being set up in their country are very attractive indeed. And of course, also due to the fact that the first major cryptocurrency was kind of created within Switzerland, the Ethereum Foundation.
And Switzerland being a leader in the world in this field, tell us, when the market's so volatile, when we look at Bitcoin and we see that it's made a huge loss in a day, how does that affect the new fintechs in Switzerland that are trying to get their coin, their token to market?
Yes, I may answer that in the sense that we are expecting definitely within next months some kind of trend to a regulation from FINMA. It's impossible to go on that way because 2017 was such an empty space of regulation for anybody who's trying to make money, sometime illegally, sometime with not the clear intention to practically create a token. We've seen this with the Tezos problem, which is another problem also, but some other projects in 2017. So,
is regulation the only hurdle you foresee for the next 12 months, say?
For Switzerland, Switzerland will follow a path that is global. Internationally speaking, we've seen in 2017, late 2017, some bans from China, even from the religious aspect, from the Great Mufti of Egypt. We've seen also, so that's another story, but we've seen also new indications, such as, for example, there is a bill in the Senate of Arizona who has proposed that people might pay their tax bills or pay any debt they own to the state in cryptocurrencies. So it's a very global move, but what governments will not succeed to control is the actual move of people getting together in trying to get rid of a state. It's a philosophical movement that we're...
Olivier, just one more question for you. You mentioned that Switzerland was a first mover when it came to the cryptocurrencies back in the day. But why is Bitcoin still the most popular, the famous one, the one that everyone talks about? Why is it so different?
Well, Bitcoin was the first cryptocurrency ever created in the way we know them today. There were some attempts before, and it's still the first cryptocurrency in which people invest when they don't know anything about cryptocurrency. Even though it has made 100 times its value in the last years, jumping from 18,000 in December and going down to 8,200 today. It's still a point of entry. And last thing I want to say about Bitcoin is a point of entry, but it's also a point of entry to purchase other cryptocurrency or ICO tokens. That's why.
For Bitcoin specifically, has the ship sailed or still time to get on?
Yeah, I'm not supposed to make any investment advice here, but Bitcoin Cash is faster than Bitcoin. Efficiency and speed of execution of transaction is a big criterion to when you're purchasing means of payment to purchase any other cryptos. Ether was well placed, but might be replaced with the speed of other kind of cryptocurrencies. So I think we're looking at some change in 2018 for sure.
Thank you, Olivia. Thank you very much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you, Amanda.
I hope that explains it, our deep dive into Bitcoin and blockchain. Martina is here with me now because she will have the Newsmaker Hour. But first, $10,000 here, Martina.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I didn't expect that at all. And it's the first time I'm actually holding a Bitcoin worth some $10,000 US if it's all charged.
Well, let's see what tomorrow brings.
I should not walk away, but still present the Newsmaker tonight. And actually, your interview with Graham Maxton, the Secretary General of the Club of Rome, is going to be broadcast. Tell me how it was.
That was a very interesting interview. The Club of Rome, I don't know if you know, but basically it's an organisation that really fights for the future of humanity. And Graham Maxton, he brought up many interesting points throughout our discussion. I don't want to give too much away, of course, but he basically explained this word sustainability that's, of course, overused. We hear it in many different ways, shapes and forms. But he explains sustainability as basically humans living in harmony with nature. For him, that's sustainability.
And interesting also that the Club of Rome is actually not based in Italy, but here in Switzerland, in Winterthur.
That can be misleading, that's true. And he also mentioned that actually a Swiss person, as you mentioned Switzerland, is behaving as though we would have 4 planets. So that's interesting.
4 planets?
Well, I guess we're not doing enough. That was the point. And he explains a little bit further in our discussion. He also mentions that education's not fulfilling its role as it should, because we really need to educate the next generation, the younger people, the urgency of doing something about global warming and the seriousness of it. And you know that very well, as you are also presenting the learning curve here on CNN Money Switzerland. I look very forward to learning more about the Club of Rome and all its different missions. Thank you, Amanda. Thank you very much, Martina. And thank you to you for watching. That's it from The Big Picture here with me, Amanda Kane. Coming up next is The Newsmaker, and we're live until 9 p.m, so don't go away.
CNN Money Switzerland weather. We start with a webcam of the day. Here is an overview of the values recorded in the last hours. And now the radar animation of the last 90 minutes. Let's have a look to forecasts for tomorrow morning. And for tomorrow afternoon. Here is an overview for the next days in German-speaking Switzerland. In western Switzerland. And south of the Alps. Thanks for following us.
Money is more than just currency. It is the fuel for how we live our lives. It connects us. It drives us. It buys us things. But it is more than that. It is who we are and what we want.
Yeah.
Oh, Money isn't everything, but it is everywhere. And so are we. We are younger, we are richer, and we are smarter. We are money. CNN Money.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever, wherever you need it. On our website, cnnmoney.ch, or on your favorite social media platform. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
And seeing Shanghai the old-fashioned way. CNN Business Traveler in China. By the end of the next decade, the largest aviation market in the world. Are you ready for that? Businesses are spreading their wings. China Eastern, keeping the Chinese skies safe. New ways to earn miles. Are you still a mileage geek? Yes, always. And bridging culture gaps. Don't ask. On the next CNN Business Traveler.
CNN Money Switzerland is designed to flow through information. Our network provides a unique take on live, worldwide financial news. We are not your common news outlet. Instead, we act as a global catalyst of interconnected information. Our live studio provides you with a detailed and sharp analysis, predicting what is yet to come. From the heart of Europe, watch CNN Money Switzerland.
The future of humanity concerns us all. Tonight on The Newsmaker, we find out how the Club of Rome is campaigning to raise awareness of potential threats. Graham Maxton is the group's Secretary General, and he tells us the clock is ticking when it comes to the environment.
We're putting ourselves into a situation where eventually all the ice on the planet will melt. There will become vast areas which are uninhabitable, where crops yields will collapse, where water will be a big problem. I mean, we're looking at something which is the biggest challenge that humanity has ever faced.
Nestlé posts weaker than expected results for 2017, and its muted sales growth forecast leaves a bitter aftertaste, showing just how far away CEO Mark Schneider is from meeting the food giant's mid-term targets. Good evening, I am Martina Fuchs, and you are watching The Newsmaker. Let's take a look now at some of the top stories making news here in Switzerland and around the world. The recovery rally is in full swing on Thursday as global stocks continue to rebound and investors seem to brush off the pickup in US inflation. European markets gained about 1% and Asian markets advanced as well. Last week's financial market turmoil was sparked by worries US wages and prices were suddenly rising quickly, and the fresh data led to a strong sell-off. Syngenta forecast a modest sales growth for 2018 on Thursday, citing low grain prices. The Swiss agricultural chemicals and seed maker was bought last year by ChemChina for $43 billion. The turnover fell by 1% to almost $13 billion in 2017. It also said it aims to sell around $5 billion in bonds in coming weeks as it nears its final settlement with US farmers who had sued over genetically engineered corn. The board of directors of Swiss Post continues to stand behind Group CEO Susanne Ruoff. Post President Urs Schwaller promised a complete investigation into illegal bookings by the Postbus subsidiary company and announced that Ruoff's yearly bonus will be frozen. Ruoff, who has been CEO since 2012, refused to step down after admitting mistakes were made by Postbus and says she only discovered last November that payment transfers carried out by the bus company, which is financed by public funds, were in fact illegal. The 19-year-old suspect, who authorities say shot and killed at least 17 at a Florida high school in the US, is expected in court on Thursday. CNN correspondent Natasha Chen is there with more details.
Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School is closed until further notice. The public school that was home to some 3,000 students is now a crime scene.
The first thing that popped in my mind was, where's the shooter and where is he going next?
At least 17 are dead and more than a dozen others injured after police say shooting suspect and former 19-year-old student Nicholas Cruz opened fire as school was close to being dismissed for the day. Investigators believe the suspect pulled the fire alarm to draw people out of school in order to kill as many as possible. Cruz is expected in court today as investigators look into the teen's troubled past and variety of gun and violence-related posts on social media.
Valentine's Day, everyone was happy, spreading love, and it just crashed down so quick. No one deserves this.
The entire community in Parkland, Florida will need more of that love and support for the foreseeable future.
It shouldn't happen anywhere in this country. And we've got to find a way for this to stop.
Cyril Ramaphosa was confirmed as the new president of South Africa on Thursday, marking a new era for the country's economy and the South African rand currency. Jacob Zuma resigned as president on Wednesday after an abundance of corruption scandals. The rand rallied to its highest level since early 2015, following weeks of maneuvers by the ruling African National Congress, the ANC, to remove Zuma from office. And the red carpet rolls out in Berlin on Thursday to kick off the Berlin Movie Festival. And the hashtag #MeToo debate seems to be taking center stage once again. The festival is organizing a panel discussion on sexual harassment in the world of entertainment and launched a new website called Speak Up, aimed at encouraging those affected by sexual harassment in the film industry. According to Berlinale director Dieter Kostlik, certain productions whose directors were accused of sexual assault were even disqualified from the lineup. The festival takes place until Sunday, the 25th of February. He's one of Norway's best loved and most successful winter athletes, and now Aksel Lund Svindal has made history by becoming the oldest skier to win Olympic gold and his country's first in the speed discipline. Svindal has been one of the dominant speed skiers of his generation, but Olympic gold had always eluded him until, on a perfect day in Pyeongchang, after a week of high wind and delays, Svindal finally won his downhill gold. We will have more on the Olympics later in the program. But coming up, we speak to the organization striving to make a difference for the future of humanity. Our newsmaker of the hour is Secretary General for the Club of Rome, Graham Maxton. Stay tuned with us. We'll have that interview for you in just a moment.
If we carry on doing that, then in about 20 years, less than 20 years, we will reach a level of CO2 in the atmosphere which will make a 2-degree increase in global average temperatures compared to 1870, before the Industrial Revolution, inevitable.
Let's talk tech. Do you want to see the latest gadgets? Understand where robotics will take us next? Find out more about the pioneers and their latest research? Join us on Tech Talk, where we'll be meeting the people behind the big ideas here in Switzerland and around the world, and finding out what it means for businesses, consumers, and the planet.
Tech Talk with Anna Maria Montero on CNN Money Switzerland.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Autrement dit, formation, business opportunities anywhere.
Excuse me, miss, you dropped this.
No, it's just a penny.
Just a penny? Just a penny? It all begins with the humble penny. Whether writing your first check or cashing big checks. To those at the top, making their mark, closing deals round the clock. On Quest Means Business, we know every penny has power. And it's not how many you have. It's what you do with them that counts. That's the marvel of money. Quest Means Business. What a profitable hour!
Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
I've spent all of my career in the field, and I think that informs who I want to talk to, but more importantly, who wants to and who accepts to talk to me. And I hope that what I bring to the table is a rigorous search for the truth and a rigorous determination and an effort to hold power accountable.
Aman Paul.
The Swiss Pulse delivers you the most important global and Swiss business and financial news, connecting Switzerland to the world. Tune in every weekday from 6 p.m. or find us on the go on our website or social media platforms.
The world, well, it is warming up at an alarming rate. But just how bad is a 2-degree increase anyway? Do we really know how bad it is? Our newsmaker of the hour is Graham Maxton, the Secretary General of the Club of Rome, an organization founded in 1968 to promote a better understanding of global challenges facing humanity. Since 2008, the group is based in Winterthur. Mr. Maxton recently spoke to my colleague Amanda Kane about the severity of climate change and why it's the responsibility of governments to take harder decisions and a lot faster.
Graham, I'm going to start with perhaps the easiest and most difficult question at the same time. What is sustainability?
Oh, that is the most difficult question because for a long time, everybody has thought they know the answer, but actually the more we use this word, the less its meaning is understood. I understand it as an attempt for us to change the economic system and the social system so that we live in balance with nature, so that we don't destroy it, so we don't destroy other species, and that we have a good chance of being here in 1,000 years. It's a way of living in balance with the rest of the world. But sustainability has come to mean an awful lot of things in the last few years.
Now, when you talk about living in balance with nature,
I mean, that's incredibly difficult to achieve when last year, if I'm not mistaken, it was the year where the most carbon emissions were emitted. So where do we go from here?
Well, we're actually in a pretty serious situation. I mean, I don't think many people really understand how serious the problem is. We've been emitting an ever-increasing amount of carbon dioxide and methane and other gases into the atmosphere. And if we carry on doing that, then in about 20 years, I mean, less than 20 years, we will reach a level of CO2 in the atmosphere which will make a 2-degree increase in global average temperatures compared to 1870, before the Industrial Revolution, inevitable. And once we get to that level, it'll be 3 degrees and 4 degrees. We kick off a chain reaction.
And what actually is the impact of this increasing heat?
Yeah. So 2 degrees will take us back 10 million years in climatic history, and 4 degrees will take us back 40 million years. So these are huge changes. This is not like the difference between yesterday and today in the weather. These are changes which will put into doubt the very existence of humanity and many other planets, many other species, I should say. We're putting ourselves into a situation where eventually all the ice on the planet will melt. There will become vast areas which are uninhabitable, where crops yields will collapse, where water will be a big problem. I mean, we're looking at something which is the biggest challenge that humanity has ever faced, and it is on our doorstep. And I don't think many people understand how big the challenge is or how urgent it is. Yet in some locations around the world, a higher temperature is good news for crops. Yes, I mean, that's true. I mean, the irony is that a lot of the people that have to make the difficult decisions actually live in countries which will see a benefit in the next 30 or 40 years. I mean, countries in Northern Europe, in Siberia, in northern parts of Canada. The summers will get much better, the winters will be less cold, the crop yields will go up. The places that are going to suffer the most and first are places like Central Africa, Bangladesh, India, Indonesia, Central America. And there, I mean, you're already seeing all sorts of consequences because of difficulty to access water and crop yields falling. And so you see migration. I mean, a lot of the problems that we've seen with migrants coming to Europe in the last few years are because of climate change. And this is what's going to get worse.
Graham, you mentioned decisions. Now, some hard decisions have to be made here, clearly, to make a difference. Are these decisions being made fast enough and hard enough?
Nowhere near enough. I mean, we talk about something like the SDGs, the United Nations coming out with the Sustainable Development Goals, or the Paris Climate Agreement. And I think some people have a sense that that's a step in the right direction, and it is. I mean, it's a miracle that we've come to this sort of agreement on a way forward. But Paris is not going to fix it, and the SDGs are not going to stop the problem. So the politicians, some of them don't understand, some of them are unable to make the changes that are needed because they have a legal influence which is national when the problem is global. We need a much bigger political movement if we're going to tackle this problem.
So do you believe that the responsibility does lie with the politicians?
Yes, I mean, it has to be a global response, it has to be a state-backed response, and it has to be somehow coordinated internationally. I mean, I see positive signs from some countries in Europe. I see very positive signs from China. I mean, China is one of the world's biggest polluters and also a big part of the problem. But Xi Jinping is now looking at building an ecological civilization, and I think that's a very important signal for the world. When the world needs a large country to take a dominant position in this and to bring us all along with them, America is not in line right now. China may be together with Germany. These are hopeful signs, I think.
We'll come back to China and the US in a little while, but you mentioned that some of our global leaders, let's call them, perhaps don't understand the seriousness of the situation, but is that all? Do they care enough, do you think?
It's very difficult to understand the situation and not care because it puts into doubt the survival of our grandchildren. I mean, this is not a problem for 60 or 70 years, it's a problem for today. So I think if you understand the situation at all, then if you're human, then you care, because it is such a big problem. And of course, you see it all over the world. I mean, you see the temperature record levels in Switzerland this month, record levels in Hong Kong this month, record level. There's storms. I mean, it's becoming more visible to a lot of people. But I think, like many, a lot of politicians also feel helpless. They don't quite know what to do. And they don't want to make a first move, which would be right, because they see competitive disadvantage in that, and so they get a lot of corporate lobbying. And also for any politician, I mean, the truth is that if they make the right decisions, if they shut down the fossil industries and greatly regulate the automotive industry and the aviation industry, they will see no immediate benefit, because the climate will continue to worsen for the next 20 years at least, because of the build-up of carbon.
There won't be an immediate pat on the back for the decision.
Exactly. There's no political gain to be had from making the right decision, and I think that also is a problem.
It's the longer-term view that we've got to take. Now, we've spoken about politics in the matter, but of course there are many good people out there that do want to make a difference, and it sometimes falls down to the individual investor. So we often hear about impact investing, for example. We hear about the Global Fund, whereby, you know, there are people coming together to try and, you know, give money to, let's say, even health issues, many diseases around the world, especially where public spending is decreasing. Do you think the individual investor can make a difference?
Yes. I think impact investing is definitely part of the solution. It's a small part of the solution, but it's definitely a part of the solution. Just as a general rule, there's not going to be a great deal of profit in saving the world. There are some areas where we need to invest heavily and where we can have a positive impact. But if investors are looking for profit first and saving the world second, then they've got the whole equation upside down. I met with some very interesting impact investors in Zug a couple of months ago, working with religious communities, 7 of the world's religions, who had come together to look at how they can make the world a better place through investment. And many of them were willing to make a loss. They said, if we can have a positive benefit on society, then we're willing to make a loss. And of course, some of the world's religions are extremely rich. So I think there's the potential. Other than that, of course, there are other areas, obviously things like solar panels or renewable energy. So there are some areas where you can have a positive impact. But right now I see an awful lot of greenwashing, an awful lot of companies saying, yes, we're sustainable, yes, here's a sustainable investment portfolio. But actually all they're doing is reformatting what they've got and putting a green stamp on it. And that's not
It's also extremely difficult to judge how, let's say, green a company is in terms of output and what they use
and this comes
to make
back
the output.
To your first question about what is sustainable. And if you look at most companies around the world, it's terribly difficult to understand what is sustainable. I mean, Unilever is a great champion right now, and Paul Polman is a darling of the green lobbyists, because he's trying to create a more sustainable Unilever. But he's not, and he can't, because it's still going to use trillions of litres of chemicals and plastics, and he's going to pump all these products out into the environment. And he's still constrained by the need to make a rising profit every year. So even companies that are trying to do the right thing, they're constrained by the system. The system forces them to produce quarterly returns, which always increase, and that means that the environment has to come second.
What about financial products like carbon emission offsetting certificates, for example? I mean, you're not obviously you're still giving off the emissions, but you're actually paying to offset that. And does that money get reinvested then?
I mean, I think it does, but I mean, this is a kind of a sticking plaster. I mean, basically, you're saying you can destroy the planet a little bit, but not too much, please. To meet the targets that would keep us below 2 degrees, we need to reduce the amount of emissions by 9% a year. 9% a year. And right now, economic growth is tied to energy. The two go up one in parallel. And so what you're saying is we have to reduce the amount of energy we use or produce every year if we're to meet these targets. Now, that's a complete different approach from what we're currently taking, which is trying to manage the rate of increase.
And when you talk about the race to reduce emissions, we're really talking about the transition from, fossil-reliant energy to renewable energy. Could we close down fossil energy tomorrow and survive?
Well, if we don't, we won't. So, I mean, we have to. It's that big a question. We have to make these changes, otherwise we won't survive. I mean, not many of us will anyway. I mean, the problem is not a technological one. The problem is a political one. I mean, if we chose to, we could shut down these industries tomorrow. It would have devastating economic effects in terms of jobs, in terms of wealth, in terms of capital write-offs. But we would put ourselves into a better path. Now, what we need to do is find that transition. But that transition has to be much more ambitious. It has to be that we begin to shut down the fossil industry. We build bridges for people to find new jobs so they don't have to suffer in that process. And we build up other sorts of energy. And we have to pay more for that. I mean, that's one of the other issues which people, I think, don't understand. We have all the technology we need. It's just that we're not willing to pay more for it today.
It's an interesting point you make. So, I mean, if we think about it in theory, I mean, really, in terms of job security the world over, we could really transition the people working in the fossil industry to renewable energy by perhaps even training them today, now.
No, I mean, one of the things that the Club of Rome is very keen on advocating is reducing the rate of inequality. And it's not just from a moral point of view. It's not just because we think that's the right thing to do. It's because if people have a good welfare net, if when they lose their jobs in the coal, oil and gas sector, they can still feed their families and they can still hold their heads up, that makes it easier to make the transition. They can go and retrain and they don't have to worry about the financial aspects. So we have to find a way of giving people a safety net to make this transition. It's essential.
While we're on the topic of jobs, we know that US President Donald Trump is trying to protect jobs at home and businesses at home. And we know that he's placed a tariff on imports of, say, things like solar panels from other countries. I mean, is that a worry to you in terms of, longer term down the road? Could less competition at home in the US mean that less people have solar as an option, for example?
Well, I mean, it's certainly true that you want to encourage as many people to use renewable energy as possible, and if the price goes up, that makes it more difficult. But where I do have sympathy with Donald Trump is in the idea that trade barriers are sometimes necessary. And I know for most people watching that seems a very strange thing to say. But if you look at what's been happening in the last few years, we've had a number of wrong ideas about economics and about the economic system. We think that it reduces inequality, whereas in fact it achieves the opposite. We think that it creates jobs, and it often does not. We think that it reduces poverty, and often it doesn't do that either. But this idea that free trade helps everybody rise up is fundamentally flawed. If you look at many of the developing countries of the world, they're encouraged to open their markets, they let in all the big Western corporations, and they sell their natural resources. But these countries, they cannot develop any advanced industrial systems themselves, and so they're left simply as places to supply resources. They can't build an economic system of their own. And so for many in developing countries, free trade is a disadvantage. And I think we need to rethink trade. We need to move the balance back into something which is actually of a benefit to society and not just to big corporations.
So, Graham, are you perhaps saying that by restricting some trade, you're helping countries to help themselves and be more innovative and self-sustainable, maybe? Exactly.
I mean, countries like Indonesia, if all they can do is sell their coal and raw materials and rubber, they can never start manufacturing automotive, cars or airplanes, because they can never develop economies of scale. I mean, what's happened in places like China or Japan or South Korea or Taiwan is that they kept the doors closed while they developed the scale and developed the technology, and then they became more open to trade. And I think we need to be more realistic if we're to actually help the poor world grow.
And don't forget, you can watch us live on YouTube or catch up with our not-to-be-missed content at the website cnnmoney.ch. We are under starters orders now for the sport. It's day 7 of the Olympics, and here with all the latest is our sports correspondent Matt Layton, who told me what Thursday was a huge day for Switzerland. Today we got warmer temperatures, we got the sun coming out. Perfect scene for, big wins today. But how did the Swiss Olympic team perform?
They were under pressure today because with the cancellation of events in the last few days, so many big events were stacked today. Until today, Switzerland won 1 medal. They've now won a second one. They came 3rd in the men's downhill, the blue ribbon event. Björn Fotz, who's the world champion, may be expected to win. He was beaten by 18 hundredths of a second by Axel Lund Svindal, 35 years old. He's the oldest gold medal winner. By the way, he's not the oldest medal winner in skiing. It's Bodie Miller, who was 36. So that was a bit of a disappointment starting off. Then we had the giant slalom. Laura Goetz in fine form. She fell over in the first 2 minutes. That was a bit of a bummer. But Michaela Schifrin, all the news is about her because she could go for 5 events. So she won that. And then we saw the biathlon. Last time, Selina Gasparin, she's one of 3 sisters. In the Winter Olympics, there's only 5 sets of 3 siblings that's ever been in there. Elisa came 8th today. Selina came 64th. And Aita, she came 68th. So a little bit disappointing today. So far, 118 medals have been given out. However, Switzerland have only won 2. But it is saving a lot of money for Swiss Olympic because they have to pay out 40,000 Swiss francs every gold medal. So they're saving a fortune so far.
Well, there are still a couple of days to go.
Yeah.
But maybe the problem is that the Swiss athletes are not focused enough. Maybe they go to the bar in Pyeongchang. How do they spend their time, their day off?
Swiss athletes are almost unique. The skiers are really institutionalised and they're all together. But most of the other athletes from small sports, even though they're 18, 20 years old, some of them, they're very mature. Culturally, they're mature. Everything about them is mature in the sense that they go sightseeing. Some of them will play cards. Some of them watch the other events. So very few of them are just sitting at home watching TV. They're all out there doing things. And that's really, really great to see. They're seeing one-off world opportunity. Let's take advantage of it. And that's the great thing about the Swiss, is they're multicultural, they're open to everything, and they're really having a wonderful time.
And here on the Swiss Pulse, we always look forward to the next big thing. So what is going to happen overnight? What can we look forward to?
I suppose Switzerland have a really good reputation in the snowboard cross for the women. Gold medal in 2006, bronze medal in 2010. 3 athletes going there tomorrow. There's going to be the women's slalom. Wendy Holdener, lots of podiums, no medals there. Can she beat Michaela Schifrin? There is going to be the Super G for the men. There's curling continues. Switzerland came back a little bit today, and many, many other events. Just one thing I forgot to mention is Switzerland had high hopes in the men's ice hockey. They were absolutely overdone today. Before today, they were saying, against Canada, we have a good chance. They were beaten 5-1, so that's not looking good. So fingers crossed. The day belonged to Norway. They've won 17 medals. 5,000 Norwegians live in Switzerland, so I hope you're having a party.
I can't wait to have you back to report on the Olympic Games tomorrow, and hopefully we can get some more medal coverage as well from the Swiss Olympic team. And stay with us, because after the break we'll be diving into part 2 of our interview with Graham Maxton, the Secretary General at the Club of Rome. And the big question is Switzerland doing enough when it comes to sustainability?
The air is clear, everything functions very well here. They are very active in their recycling. Switzerland is certainly a model in many ways. It also, though, has quite a high ecological footprint. The average Swiss person lives as if he had about 4 planets.
CNN Money Switzerland Leisure Weather. We start with a webcam of the day. We continue with the Alps of western Switzerland. And the weather forecast for the next days. A glance now on the resorts of central and eastern Switzerland. an overview of the weather conditions to come. Here is the snow report of the ski resorts in France. And the weather forecast for this region. And we end with the Austrian and Italian Alps. We wish you a pleasant stay in the mountains.
Business is always changing. Keep up with CNN Money. Maggie Lake is live in the heart of the world's economic epicenter, New York City, tracking all the action of the stock exchanges and the big business stories from around the world. Get top analysis of market movements and a daily breakdown of financial headlines. CNN Money with Maggie Lake.
Spotlight, CNN Money Switzerland's program dedicated to lifestyle, celebrity, entertainment and culture. We bring you a snapshot of the latest trends in Switzerland and around the world, from Hollywood to design, big names and rising stars, to art collectors and architects. It's right here under the spotlight.
Spotlight with Martina Fuchs on CNN Money Switzerland. CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever you need it. Get the latest Swiss business and financial information on TV or on the go through our website, cnnmoney.ch, or through your favorite social media. The best Swiss business news, whenever and wherever you need it. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
You make sure you're feeling good. We'll be focusing on all the tools available to us today to make sure we're physically and mentally healthy. From monitoring and avoiding disease to reactive and preventative healthcare. In particular, we'll be delving into the latest innovation coming out of Switzerland to ensure a long and healthy life.
Feeling Good with Amanda Kane on CNN Money Switzerland.
Since the founding of the Red Cross in 1863, the city of Geneva has a long tradition of hosting international organizations. In our program, International Geneva, we'll be exploring issues of international cooperation, humanitarian assistance and human rights, and talk to international players about the challenges and solutions to global problems.
International Geneva with Martina Fuchs on CNN Money Switzerland.
Do you recycle? Under 10% of all plastic consumed globally is recycled. Europe wants to reduce plastic waste by 30%. But that's not extreme enough, says the Club of Rome, a group of individuals that promotes an understanding of global challenges. They say we need to curb production of waste altogether. Here's part 2 of our newsmaker with Graham Maxton.
I'd like to talk to you about recycling because, as we know, over the years and decades, our waste, much of the West's waste in plastics and paper and so on and so forth, and metal has gone to countries like China. China has accepted that import, I should say. They've now stopped that. So what does that mean for all this waste? What's happening to it?
Well, I mean, there are some other countries taking it right now, India, Cambodia, a few others. But But they're not going to take the amount that China took, and so we're having to change the policies. And there's two ways to do that. Firstly, it's investing in businesses which can actually do that recycling at home in Europe or wherever. And secondly, it's by reducing the amount of waste in the first place. A headline recently in the UK that they're going to start encouraging people to take their own water with them and to refill up from taps in restaurants and businesses around the country. And they're going to make that a plan for the future rather than everybody having bottled water. Something as simple as that can make a huge change. So I think we need to think not just about how to recycle these products, but how to stop them being produced and used in the first place. I know that's not good for the plastics industry, but it's a reality which we have to embrace.
But the EU has come forward recently to say that it wants all plastic waste to be reduced by 30%. And at the moment, I think it's under 10% of all plastic that's actually recycled, if I'm not mistaken. Is that an achievable target?
All these things depend on how strict your regulations are and how heavy the taxes are on the other side. You're right, 9% of plastic is recycled today, 16% is used is burnt, and the rest is thrown away. We have a very serious problem. What we're doing with the oceans and the amount of plastic that's going in there is creating an ecological disaster. And although we won't feel it for some time, that will have a consequence on the entire food chain. And it's really incredibly short-sighted of us. So it's the determination of legislators. If they want to achieve 30%, it's perfectly possible to do that, but it's up to them.
Is there good technology there to actually recycle plastics at the moment?
One of the problems is that we often have several sorts of plastic together. And so separating those out is very labour-intensive and often very difficult, and particularly when some of the plastics are covered with materials which then make it much more difficult to recycle them as well. It's a question of redesigning the products as well as simply setting up industries to recycle what we've got.
You mentioned about bringing your own water to work and so on and so forth. But a lot of the plastic isn't just the bottle, of course. It's also in packaging. I think it's as much as 2/3 of all plastics out there is used in packaging. And, we know ourselves from Christmas, the amount of plastic that you get from parcels is unbelievable. What's the solution there? How can you reduce that?
If you think back to, your grandparents' time or my grandparents' time, they didn't bring all this plastic home. My grandmother, her trash for the week or rubbish for the week would fit in something this size. Today we have huge bags full of stuff. And it's a question of being able to change the way we sell foods so they don't have to be wrapped in plastic. You can take your own containers to buy them, or they can be wrapped in paper, or they can be wrapped in something which is much less environmentally damaging. That might cost more. It might make it more difficult to keep the food for a long enough period of time. Those are the prices that we have to pay to live in a more sustainable world. For the last 20 or 30 years, everything has been driven by cost minimization to try and maximize sales. And we have to think differently if we're to tackle these problems.
It's about rethinking what we do on a daily basis.
It's about rethinking the entire economic system, because the entire economic system is not serving the needs of most people, and it will kill us if we carry on like this.
Now, Graham, you've lived in Switzerland a while now. What are you seeing? Is Switzerland an environmentally friendly, so to speak, country?
It's certainly, the air is clear, everything functions very well here, they are very active in their recycling. Switzerland is certainly a model in many ways. It also, though, has quite a high ecological footprint. The average Swiss person lives as if he had about 4 planets. It's way beyond the sustainable level. So, while Switzerland does a great deal right, it also needs to reduce its ecological footprint by cutting back on the amount of waste and resources that it uses. And I think, countries which are as rich as Switzerland have the opportunity to lead and to show others how to do this, because I'm not talking about everybody going back to the Stone Age. We can still live a very high quality of life. And Switzerland has a good enough welfare system and a system of inequality, not a very high level of inequality, that it makes setting an example for a transition much easier here than in other places.
For a while there, it seemed like Switzerland was leading when it came to solar innovation, but it seems to have dropped kept out of the limelight there. Why is that?
Well, greatly because, I mean, the Chinese in particular have invested so heavily and with state backing and with the scale that the Chinese have, where they can manufacture and sell at a level that is simply so much bigger than anybody else can achieve, and so drive the costs down. That's really been the big change, I think.
You mentioned that Switzerland can do more in terms of reducing waste and energy usage. In your experience, do taxes, like heavy taxes, work in economies?
It depends how heavy they are. I mean, we've had carbon taxes in various countries for some time now, and they really haven't had that big an impact. There's talk about having taxes on fizzy drinks to reduce the sugar consumption, for example. But again, they're not having a very big impact. But then you put a tax on plastic bags and suddenly you reduce 90% of the demand. And it's a tiny tax, 5 cents or 5 rappen. So that can have a very big impact. It depends, I think, on the area you're targeting. Something like a plastic bag can be replaced by a reusable bag very simply. People who are very keen on consuming litres of fizzy drink find it very difficult or resent a tax on that. So taxes can play a role. Education can play a very important role. But also encouraging companies to rethink what they're doing. I think that's also key to making the transition right.
And when we look at the auto industry, I mean, in Switzerland, for example, you are taxed, I would say, fairly heavily on having a very high a car with high emissions. So in terms of the future of the car industry and emissions, I mean, is what we're reading about driverless cars, electric cars, the right way forward?
That's not the change that's really needed. What we have to move to a situation is where we share cars. We need to move, because, I mean, if you think about most cars, they sit on the side of the street, parked for most of their lives. They're not used very much. And what we need to do is to move to a situation where a car is ubiquitous and you simply pick it up as you would a tram or a bus. It's just that it's a personal form of transport. That would have a dramatic impact on the industry and the volume of cars that we see on the streets. It wouldn't be very good for the car industry because you'd see a reduction in output of perhaps 80%. But it is much better for the environment and probably much better for society.
And in many ways, we're already quite good at sharing in the economy when it comes to houses. Yes. It can be done. It's been proven.
Exactly. I mean, the Airbnb and many other organisations are showing that it is possible for a sharing economy. Of course, you have a natural resistance on the part of the industries which are going to be affected by that because the automotive industry, again, needs a very, very big transition. But it also employs a huge percentage of the working population. And so we have to manage that transition very carefully. If we're going to cut the auto industry by 80%, and I think we need to make sure that we do that in a way which doesn't cause hardship for millions of people.
Is the education system doing enough to really educate the younger population that will, soon be in the workplace to make a difference in the world?
Not nearly enough. I mean, there is a growing movement in student groups in Europe and the US and in some other parts of the world against the teaching of the economic system as it is today. This is a neoliberal, free market, minimal government idea that has become so common. And there's a backlash against that. And we are certainly, in the Club of Rome, trying to encourage that process by having our own summer schools to help people understand. I think we need to make people much more aware of the need for improving well-being. Human well-being is what the goal should be, not economic growth. In most of Europe and the US, there is already enough. The economies are big enough. We don't need growth. And so we need to change what we're trying to achieve. And that is greatly down to educating people so they understand. And understand also the danger of climate change so that they can do something about that.
Yeah, Graham, all we ever hear is economic growth, how, different economies have expanded. It's got to be a shift in attitude. And do you believe in the next generation to make that shift?
There is a growing number of young people who I think see that the existing system needs to change. It's certainly a very small minority still, but we certainly see across the world a rising awareness of the need for something different. And I mean, if you go back to John Maynard Keynes, I mean, he wrote an essay for his grandchildren in the 1930s, which said that by today we should only have to work for 15 hours a week because there would be enough wealth. Now, we have enough wealth. It is possible to do that. It's just that it's very unevenly distributed. So we need to think about how we run our societies, where the work and wealth is allocated, and how to reallocate that to create a fairer society which doesn't require economic growth. I should say, when it comes to GDP and growth, I'm totally agnostic. We can have as much growth in GDP as we like, but what we must not do is carry on increasing the ecological footprint. We must stop producing CO2. We must reduce our resource use, and that way we can live more sustainably than we do today.
In some ways, rewiring the attitudes and the thinking takes longer than the new technologies coming online.
I think that's true. I mean, you can see change in many areas in society. I mean, on gay marriage or on smoking, and we've seen in a relatively short period of time big changes in attitudes. And I think we might see something similar here. I mean, things like Occupy wakened up a lot of people, and I think these changes can come quite quickly. They will have to come quite quickly. In fact, the longer we wait, the more difficult it will be.
You mentioned a couple of things throughout our conversation that we can do to make a difference, bringing our own water, our own lunchbox, for example. Is it fruitful? Is there anything we can really do as an individual at home?
Not a great deal. It depends where you live. I mean, in China, what you can do is different from what you might be able to do in Switzerland or in the United States.
Let's say Switzerland.
I mean, recycling is good. Bottles, paper, tin, I mean, all that's very nice, but it won't save the world, unfortunately. The best thing you can do is educate others, is help other people understand that we need to change, and that we need to change by acting collectively. The other thing you can do as an individual, and I know this will not go down well with the corporate people who are watching, is cut your consumption. Reduce the amount of stuff you buy. Don't buy the new phone every 6 months or every 18 months. Wait 3 or 4 years if it lasts that long. The same with all the other things you buy. Consciously try to consume less. And even if you reduce your consumption by 10%, if everybody does that, we would see a radical restructuring of the economic system, because businesses operate in such tiny margins, they would have to listen and change what they're doing. So go on strike as a consumer.
We're a race in the Western world that consume far too much. Yeah. In all ways. Yeah. Well, thank you, Graham. I hope we've, together put the message out there this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our financial story of the day was Nestlé, but it wasn't the best day for the food and drink giant, who posted lackluster results in 2017. Today we caught up with CFO François-Xavier Rocher to get his take on the company's latest performance. And it was the US market that was disappointing for the company.
The growth is actually broad-based. When we look at it by geography, we have growth in all the regions, in the Americas, in Europe, in Africa, Middle East, Asia. So it's very well distributed in terms of geography, and it is very well distributed as well by product category, which means that the growth is taking place across all our categories. The US market is a little bit of a difficult one today, given that there is a soft consumer demand, and we saw that clearly as at the end of the year. This is not only for us. I mean, the US food and beverage market is actually flat, and we have been flat, roughly speaking, as well last year. And this happens across categories, so this is not necessarily linked to our portfolio.
But Nestlé benefited from the tax reform in the US.
We did, absolutely, yes. We expect to get about $300 million of tax reduction going forward per annum. From 2018 onwards, indeed. Plus, we will recognize one-off tax gain of $850 million that we have already recognized in 2017.
A word on Mr. Schneider. He's been the new Nestlé CEO for a year now. What did his arrival change in the management of the group?
Mark is coming from outside with an outstanding track record of value creation in his former company, so he's bringing an external perspective as well. While he knows very well Nestlé as well, and he has had time already to get to know the company, get to know the people. I think that Mark is very strategic, so I think that he has brought a lot, and you have seen quite a lot of input already. things that have changed since he has arrived. We have been active in portfolio management. You saw what happened with the disposal of US confectionery, the acquisition of Atrium. We have made some progress as well in terms of capital structure, announcing a share buyback of 20 billion Swiss francs a couple of months ago. We have had some changes in the organization with Nestlé Nutrition now integrated into the zones. These are just examples of changes that have happened since the beginning of the year.
Let's talk now about L'Oréal Group. They want to buy the share back. How do you see this initiative?
We have announced this morning that we do not intend to renew the shareholder agreement with the Bettencourt family. We are very happy with our investment with L'Oréal. It has delivered a very attractive return for Nestlé over the years. We are very supportive of the management at L'Oréal. We have entertained an excellent relationship with the Bettencourt family, and we intend to continue this excellent relationship. But we do not intend to renew the shareholder agreement so as to preserve all available options for the benefit of Nestlé shareholders.
And what is going to be your acquisition strategy this year?
Well, I can't give you any details. That being said, in our Capital Market Day in London a few months ago, we have announced that we had an interest in growing externally so as to strengthen our portfolio in a few categories, for example, in our fast-growing categories like coffee, like water, like infant nutrition, as well as in consumer care. Since then, we have already announced a couple of moves, such as the one that we did with Atrium, for example, or we made a move as well with the acquisition of Blue Bottle in coffee as well. So we are really delivering along the line of what we had announced a few months ago.
And in tune with our newsmaker tonight, here's another story about fighting global warming. There is apparently a buzz in the air when it comes to electric cars, especially when we think of the growing pollution problem in India's cities. CNN's Nikhil Kumar visits the biennial Delhi Auto Expo to explore India's increasing role in the auto industry.
It's already the world's 5th largest car market. More and more Indians are buying cars for the first time as the economy grows.
We have a huge population, and the aspirations are also growing, so people have started buying cars.
Sugata Sen from the country's leading car industry body says India is still playing catch-up with the West.
The penetration of cars in India is only 20 per 1,000 people, whereas in any Western developed country it will be much, much more.
And India isn't just buying more cars. It wants to make more cars and it wants to sell them to the world. It's all part of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's Make in India initiative, a drive to boost manufacturing. But more cars also means more pollution, already a major problem in big Indian cities like Delhi. Which is why there is a growing focus on electric technology. In fact, last year, one of Modi's top ministers said India's aim is to make sure that by 2030, most cars in the country are powered by electricity. But there's a long, long road ahead. It's not just about cars. To achieve its electric dream, India needs to build more and better infrastructure. Take access to electricity. It's still a problem in parts of this country, and even when there is power, it's not always regular. All that needs to change. For now, sales are low, very low. Mahindra & Mahindra, the top manufacturer in India's electric car market, says it sold only 1,200 such vehicles last year. But the mood is still upbeat, as companies eye hundreds of millions of potential new customers.
In the last 6 to 9 months, the potential of electric vehicles becoming mainstream has increased substantially.
Pavan Goenka heads Mahindra & Mahindra, which has been in the automobile business for 70 years.
Yes, there's a long way to go, but it's not very difficult and not very expensive. A typical charger will cost less than $5,000, okay? And therefore, to put 1,000 charging points in a city is not something that's unaffordable for the government. For $5 million, you can cover a city like Delhi.
If India succeeds, it won't just achieve a manufacturing goal. With some 12 million young people entering the workforce each year, India desperately needs new ways to generate jobs. Modi himself came to power promising to help young Indians find work. A successful electric revolution with more cars, more factories and more jobs could drive India towards more than one goal. Nikhil Kumar, CNN, New Delhi.
Thank you very much for watching the Newsmaker Hour. Up next is your weather forecast, and I'll see you tomorrow at the Swiss Pulse. Have a good night.
Welcome to the CNN Money Switzerland weekend weather, starting with Saturday. And here are the comfort indexes for the Swiss cities. Let's have a look for Saturday in Europe. And the comfort indexes for some cities. Let's go to Sunday in Switzerland. And here are the comfort indexes. And we end with Sunday in Europe. And discover the more attractive cities based on the weather.
News programmes are usually full of short stories that hardly go beneath the surface. We give you the big picture. Every weekday evening at 7 p.m, the big picture goes deeper, looking at an issue from different angles and bringing you the guests who take time to speak, explain and elaborate. Our viewers get a deeper understanding of the day's issues and the context that underlies them. The big picture, weekdays from 7 to 8 p.m.
Money is more than just currency. It is the fuel for how we live our lives. It connects us. It drives us. It buys us things. But it is more than that. It is who we are and what we want.
Oh,
Money isn't everything, but it is everywhere, and so are we. We are younger, we are richer, and we are smarter. We are money. CNN Money.
How do you turn your idea into a successful business in Switzerland? If you want to develop your business, have individual mentoring and coaching, optimize your business model, develop a marketing strategy, acquire new skills, learn how to network. Autrement dit, formation, business opportunities anywhere.
CNN Money Switzerland brings you the content you need, whenever you need it. Get the latest Swiss business and financial information on TV or on the go through our website, cnnmoney.ch, or through your favorite social media. The best Swiss business news, whenever and wherever you need it. Only from CNN Money Switzerland.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Hello, I'm Maggie
Maggie Lake. We'll be returning to our coverage of the school shooting in Florida shortly. But first, we'd like to bring you another major story breaking this hour. South Africa is ushering in a new era with a new leader at the helm. South African lawmakers celebrating in song just a couple of hours ago after Cyril Ramaphosa was elected president. Ramaphosa was selected to lead the nation just hours after Jacob Zuma resigned, succumbing to pressure amid mounting corruption claims. Addressing South Africa's parliament earlier, President Ramaphosa vowed to work very hard not to disappoint the people of South Africa. David McKenzie joins us now live from Cape Town. And David, this is a drama that we have been following, and I'm sure a great deal of relief at this transition.
Relief and certainly excitement here at Parliament in Cape Town, and you had those amazing scenes of the ANC members rising in song, singing a song that is really a song just for Ramaphosa. They wrote it for him, they sang it for him, and when he came in as the new president of South Africa, the only one elected by Parliament, it was a momentous occasion in this country. Just the fourth president South Africa has seen since the dawn of democracy, and in his comments, his brief speech to members, he really reached out to the opposition. This man who was locked in a battle, it seems, with the outgoing president, Jacob Zuma, a man who late in the evening yesterday, South Africa time, resigned from office after at least 10 days of intense pressure from his own party, from Parliament, and just general South Africans to leave, leaving behind him a wake of scandal and allegations of corruption that are still unfolding. But this moment was for Cyril Ramaphosa, the man who was always seen to be a possible president in South Africa, finally